some things that have been going on here. I'm trying to get to where I can do a scheduled time to do this. I got an email, several folks did, regarding a change for the definition of what is an inactive member. Actually, I think I need to see. I believe this is the tab here. This is a 5-page report. It is by the Republican Party of Arkansas Rules Committee regarding whether inactive members of the Republican Party of Arkansas and county committees can vote. Now, here's the backstory. This Rules Committee has been on an anti-conservative rant for some time now. They oppose the efforts to make changes at the state convention, and then they wrote the opinion that allowed the Republican Party of Arkansas Executive Committee to nullify the state convention, where we, the people, wanted to do things such as close primaries, support paper ballots, not allow the elected officials to have a free vote on the state committee meetings, that sort of thing. So in other words, this RPA Rules Committee is basically a bunch of Liz Cheney's, Mitt Romney's, John McCain type folks that are doing everything they can to sabotage conservative efforts. That's what they are. And their new game is to try to create drama and strife within GOP county committees so they can shut them down. And one of the ways they're doing that, because I was involved in this, is in Craighead County, there was an effort to try to allow inactive members to vote when they were electing officials. Now, that effort was rightfully voted down because the definition of an inactive member is someone who is not active. It means they can't vote. So what the RPA is doing is they went through the various rules regarding inactive members. I'm not going to read this whole thing because it is 5 pages, but you should be able to see it. You may have to. I'll post a link to it, but it's a PDF file. But if you can't read that, you may have to contact someone within the Republican Party to see what the details of this is. You can put it here in live chat on Rumble. By the way, I mainly use Rumble to broadcast. I do post this in Twitch as well as YouTube, but Rumble's my primary way of disseminating information. But it goes to the various things regarding an inactive member. Inactive members can't issue proxies. They're not allowed to vote on the executive committee. There's some other things they can't do. But supposedly, an inactive member, someone who's missed 3 or more meetings, can still walk in there and vote on a county committee meeting. Now, they're saying that have missed fewer than 4 consecutive meetings. Now, I don't know how if they've missed 3 and they're inactive, why does it matter if they've missed fewer than 4? It doesn't make any sense, but the real reason they're doing this was an issue in the Craighead County GOP committee. I actually filmed some of what happened there. As a matter of fact, I can go ahead and bring that video up. And I'll show you what it is I was talking about, because this was fairly recent that this happened. And there was a complaint to allow inactive members to vote, and the people voted it down. Well, so I think what they're trying to do is allow this to where they can somehow bring up a complaint or issue, like I said, some kind of drama that they can then file to either slow down or eliminate the whole county committee over this issue. And they've done cowardly things like this before. In Saline County, there was literal fist fights and a lot of drama actually that initially started regarding inactive members. And it ended up eventually bubbling up to a complaint filed against the committee, and they used that to disband the whole committee. because the Saline County Committee was at the time conservative. So here, I'll play a little bit of this. This is also from just the right angle.
So he's so an opposite side here, and what we need to do now is bring it to a vote. Is that correct? And and it has to be from active members. If you've got an armband on,
we voted.
No one seconded.
We voted this.
Yes, I did. He says I did.
Okay, ready.
This committee voted to suspend local rules and go by state regulations.
We don't have rules, then we don't have county. County rules, you have to abide by the state rules, so there's no point in having the county rules.
Okay. All right. He's appealing the decision of the chair, and so if you have a armband on, if you agree with my decision, please stand. Okay, we'll start off with a count, starting with Robbie. 1,
2. See it when you say your number.
when you say the number.
So anyway, that's a little bit. And eventually they voted down. Like I said, the chair ruled that they're not allowed inactive members to vote. And then there was an appeal made. And then the majority of the people in the committee said, no, we're going to agree with the chair that inactive members are allowed to vote. This kind of stuff is important because this is how policy is shaped. And I'm going to show you an example of what happens when conservatives are kicked out of county committees, like what has happened right now with the Republican Party of Arkansas. So they voted it down. Inactive members are not allowed to vote. There is a possibility that a complaint may be filed over this issue, as stupid as it is. And the reason why I titled this "What is," that was a reference to Bill Clinton when he was under investigation. He asked for the definition of "is," using lawyer talk to try to weasel his way out of various. I can't remember what the investigation was over. I don't think it was Monica Lewinsky. I think it was something else like Whitewater. There's so many scandals, but he was under testimony. And he actually gave that excuse. And so I really urge the conservative establishment, the conservative folks that are out there. Some of them have talked about county committees in the past, but they need to do a bigger effort. Yes, the tariffs are going on. Yes, there's all kinds of wacky things being said by Democrats and rulings by judges, but most people can't do much about that. These are things you can do something about. Side note on local issues, this is a comedian. He's some guy from Persia. Turning Point USA is going to have him in Conway tonight at 7 p.m. They're going to have free food. I think it's raisin cakes. I got Facebook message about this, and so I said, they asked me to share this with folks. If you're in the Central Arkansas area, want to see this, it's free. The guy's name's Kayvon. He's going to be at Turning Point USA. It says buy tickets, but you don't have to. Just go to UCA, University of Central Arkansas, UCA in Conway. And this is done by Turning Point USA. I'm glad they're doing this, but again, I really wish Turning Point USA would focus on some of these committees and what's going on, what the RPA is doing to conservatives, how the RPA is lying about the state convention. And speaking of that, here in this is a committee hearing that was yesterday. This was over a bill regarding waivers regarding the SNAP program and eligibility waivers. This is so people can have more money while they're on SNAP. And most of this testimony is basically a bunch of people saying that, yes, there was a time where I really needed it, and we're not trying to game the system. The sad thing is, however, there are a lot of people that are gaming the system. There was a guy to testify against this bill named Nick Horton. He has a group called Opportunity Arkansas. And he was basically mistreated in this committee. Because when a bill is introduced, and after all the opening statements, They allow the public to testify. Now, normally, when they say, is there anybody for or against the bill, anybody who can come up and say, I would like to testify against this bill. However, they managed to block Nick Horton from testifying. This was done by Jeff Wardlaw, who I've talked about before as being a Democrat pretending to be a Republican, who mainly orchestrated this, along with Jonathan Dismang. And they basically snubbed him from testifying. Now, there's not much that can be done regarding this because Dismang happens to be the chair of the state Congressional Rules Committee that would have to oversee this. So once again, just like with the Republican Party of Arkansas, they get to investigate themselves. If you have an issue with an executive member, the executive committee forms an investigative committee. So it's a fox guarding the henhouse. So just like we need groups like Turning Point USA and Benny Johnson and really the Republican National RNC to come in and clean house regarding the RPA, we need a Doge there. We need this in the Arkansas legislature. The best thing to do regarding this type of behavior that I'm going to show you is primaries. Those very same primaries that we need closed so that we don't have Democrats sneaking over and electing people like Breonna Davis and Jeff Wardlaw and Jane English. And I know Breonna Davis and Jane English won because of Democrats' crossover vote. I know that for a fact. I was involved in that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this. It's about 30 minutes long, where they go through this bill. And look how they treat Nick Horton, and then how they treat other folks that come up and speak, and how they ignore things like that. The fact that there is corruption within SNAP benefits. And then I'll turn this camera off and let you listen to this, and then I got to go on the rest of the day. Folks, follow me at Just the Right Angle. There's donation links in the description. Matter of fact, I'll post them again in the live chat. I'm, of course, having to fight against the globalist rhino groups that have infested the Republican Party. Guys like Caldwell Consulting, Impact Management. They're the ones that run the Republican Party, and they're the reasons why we haven't gotten rid of the income tax, why we're still going to be funding PBS, why we're still having windmill farms and communist Chinese crypto mining facilities set up, and why we still are having to waste money on pet projects, on bike paths, why these city and county groups are going to be able to bump up tax increases. It's because of them. But anyway, I'll play this now, and then I will kind of let y'all listen in while I take off and get ready to do some other stuff. Let me put on closed caption here.
On where you stand on this?
We have not, sir. We still believe it's in the best interest to implement the current rule that was just passed so that we can see what the impact of that is. It is difficult to
Side note, what they're talking about is the fiscal impact study of 1915. They haven't actually done one yet. So they're basically, just like Nancy Pelosi, they're passing the bill to see what's in it. In other words, how much it's going to cost. Usually you have to have a fiscal impact study on some of these bills. This bill is, by the way, being rushed through. It should have no chance in a Republican supermajority. But since, like I said before, there's a bunch of Republicans that only pretend to be Republicans, I don't know. It's actually going to be in the Arkansas House today at about 1:30. I probably will not be able to do a broadcast of that. So I'm broadcasting this now.
estimate the number of people who may remain on an extended period of time with an additional asset limit.
And if I recall, when you were here speaking last week about this, when did that rule pass?
The rule passed last Thursday.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions by the committee? I do have one. I'd like to hear your response to Representative Eubanks' point, and I tend to agree with him that if that rule changed and that raised the limit, there was going to be some additional administrative cost associated with that. So does this fiscal impact include that, or is this from the old limit to the new limit?
This is intended to include that. We had to estimate some additional system changes. We don't know exactly what changes would need to be made to move the income limit, tie it to the cost of living increase, the inflation factor. And so those are all things that we would have to make changes to within our eligibility system. Yes, sir.
Do we know what that fiscal impact was going to be just based on the rule change?
I would have to get that for you. I don't have it. We've already made those system changes, so we do have a number that we could provide.
Okay. Any additional questions by the committee?
You got a question? I'm going to recognize you, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't get to be here the other day. I was in another committee when y'all were presenting your bill. So I went back and watched some of the video of it, and I had, at one point considered trying to do some sort of bill this year regarding the kind of the fiscal cliff that people end up with on the government assistance. But it seems like this bill basically, it just moves the cliff down, but doesn't do it sort of in a stair-step type manner like I was thinking about trying to do. Can you explain, why you just did it that way instead of kind of reducing it or increasing that amount slowly while decreasing services, to kind of try to wean people off the benefits?
I was having a hard time hearing you, Representative Long, but the purpose of the bill was to, in my mind, allow people to accumulate assets so that they could, at one point, get off of public assistance, and that the increase due to the inflationary factor was to increase that with each year as cost increase, because we all know what food costs are doing. So I guess I'm a little confused about what your question was as far as going down. I want to move people off of public assistance, and I believe in order to do that, you have to give them an opportunity to do so. I know as an individual growing up, I was able to accumulate something, and because I was also able to leverage what I accumulate to accumulate more. And like I said, the purpose of the bill is twofold. Number one, I do not want people to go hungry. Number two, I want to try to move people off of public assistance when possible and help them improve their situation.
Seeing no further questions, we'll move to the for and against. We have quite a few signed up. We have Nick Horton signed up to speak against the bill. If you guys would, if they... Oh, now wait a minute. If you've already spoke, we're not going to replow the ground. So we're not doing this again. So Nick Horton's already spoke, so he's scratched. What about Nick's?
I haven't been allowed to speak on the fiscal note. There wasn't a fiscal note on Thursday. Is that in the rules that I'm not allowed to speak?
If you've already spoke against the bill, you cannot speak again. Have you spoke against the bill? It's a yes or no question.
I spoke against the bill on
Okay,
Thursday,
then
but
you're not speaking at this point. Nick Steele, did he speak against the bill last time? No, Nick Steele is recognized to speak against the bill.
All right. My name is Nick Staley. I'm a visiting fellow at FGA Action, and we're a think tank that works on reducing barriers to work and getting people out of government dependency. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm here to testify in opposition to HB 1915. And while I appreciate the good intent behind this bill and the desire to give Arkansans a hand up, I'm afraid that it would instead trap more folks in dependency rather than providing them with the tools they need to become self-sufficient. I think some historical context would be helpful. SB 306 was enacted in 2023 and DHS was given the ability to raise the income threshold well beyond federal standards and temporarily elevate the asset cap to $5,500 for one full year, once every 5 years. I remind you that this is already more generous than the federal standard. In contrast, this bill permanently expands eligibility by raising the asset limit to double the asset limit established in federal law for as long as enrollees are receiving benefits. In doing so, I want to remind you we're also, because we can say this is federal money, but we're also growing the federal deficit, which is at a crisis. So I would urge you all to uphold this principle of temporary targeted assistance and oppose this broad and permanent expansion in food stamp eligibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Seeing no questions, thank you for your, oh, sorry, Representative Pilkington, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Nick, when I was in grad school, I worked in Section 8 housing, and I would constantly see this where people they'd have Section 8 housing, they would get a job, they're working, they're doing everything we want to do, and then unfortunately, though, they would get a promotion, and they potentially would lose their housing. And so they wouldn't take the promotion, they wouldn't take more work. My understanding is this bill will just allow them to increase those assets so they wouldn't be burdened by losing certain benefits if they increase their asset limits. But is it creating a cliff or is it creating an off limit? Because I'm confused on that, and I'm sorry, maybe Representative Eubanks addressed this. I wasn't here on Thursday, so I'm sorry. And maybe he can address it in his close too. But I'm just going through this. I like off ramps. I don't like cliffs, and so it's kind of both of y'all, but it just popped in my head.
So the way I see this is what it's doing is it's moving that cliff into the future. And it seems like when you see bills like this and others, they often do that same thing. And the fact of the matter is there's already transitional benefits in most welfare programs. And so as income increases, the benefit amounts ratchet down, and there are, I believe it's up to a year. I can't remember the name of the program, but there are already programs in food stamps to allow some of this. And of course, we know that it was, I think I just testified, it was 306. Yeah, SB 306. And so we're already, I think, as a state establishing sort of that off-ramp. And so I think it's better to do that than to have this just simply pushing out into the future this problem that already exists. And I think our calculation said it was somewhere between 7,000 and 11,000 people being added to food stamps because of this. So I think that's also worth noting.
Any further questions for committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. We do have a Kristen Harper, as she testified previously. Okay, you're recognized to testify for the bill.
Good morning, Kristen Harper. I'm with Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families, and I'm here to ask you to vote for HB 1915 so that we can provide critical access to food for low-income families by requesting a waiver to increase the state's asset limit to $6,000 and, importantly, index it to inflation as well. As you may know, Arkansas has one of the highest food insecurity rates at 18.9% in 2023, compared to 13.5% nationally. Even more distressing is that food insecurity among children is even higher. In 2023, Feeding America reported that 25% of Arkansas children were food insecure. Food insecurity and hunger have long-lasting, cumulative, and significant consequences on children and families. Arkansas is one of only 13 states that continues to have an asset limit, meaning a limit on how much a family can have in their bank account, the value of an additional vehicle, etc., and still have access to SNAP. Most states have chosen to eliminate the asset limit, but Arkansas currently maintains the lowest asset limit possible. Most financial advisors are going to recommend that you have savings to cover 3 to 6 months of expenses, right? But Arkansas, again, with our asset limit of $3,000 or $4,500 for individuals with disabilities or those over 60, is much lower than that. For most families, $3,000 is not enough for even 1 month of expenses. Increasing the SNAP asset limit to $6,000 across the board will help decrease hunger for children and families, while also allowing families to save for emergencies and otherwise do just what we want families to do, right? To have this temporary safety net and then ultimately transition off of benefits and not fall back into poverty. HB 1915 will help reduce hunger in our state while also allowing families to build self-sufficiency. So I ask you to please vote for HB 1915. Thank you.
Representative Rose, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony today. I went way back in history and remembered when I was 20 years old, newly married in college, and we weren't making much money, didn't have much money. And somebody suggested, and this is a weird place in history for me, somebody suggested that we apply for benefits like this. And we were turned down, I think at the time, because we had, maybe it was with $2,500 in the bank or whatever the asset limit was at that time. And I remember it was frustrating. And I realized, well, I had to do something. So I got a second and then a third job to cover all those needs as a family while being a full-time student. And I'm just curious to your thoughts on if we don't raise this asset limit, the alternatives for folks who are able to work is an alternative to get a job or to get a second job or pick up some other kind of paying contract labor or whatever. Just kind of your thoughts on that. Because that's my personal experience. I'm just curious what your experience would share.
Sure. I think the answer is it depends, right? So many families, they have different circumstances. Some parents are full-time caregivers for children with disabilities and so may not be able to pick up that additional job as just one example. So there's a wide range. But again, Arkansas is one of the few states that still has an asset limit. And I think at the end of the day, this is going to help families and most importantly, children. We know if children are well fed, they're going to do better in school, both academically, behaviorally. And so I just think that this is the right thing to do for kids and families.
I'm recognized. Thank you. I had a question for you and kind of to follow up on what Representative Rose was discussing. So my current understanding of this is, so a SNAP benefit is a maximum benefit of what, $300 a month, maybe $250 a month?
It depends on the family size, but roughly, yes, you're looking at on average about $6.60 a day.
Okay. So now we're back. Okay. I can't touch it. So my question or my point to that would be, and Representative Rose kind of got me thinking along this line, do you believe that Arkansans are trying to impoverish themselves to continue to get a $300 a month benefit into perpetuity? I mean, I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why anyone would do that. And I think to Representative Eubanks' point, we've talked about this fiscal cliff that's out there for people, and I agree that cliff exists, but I hope that by extending this asset limit, we're allowing people to take an opportunity to continue to better themselves, to his point earlier. So would you agree with that? Or?
Yes, sir, I would agree.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Representative Richardson, do you have a question? Okay, well, you flailed your hand. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience speak for or against this bill? Yes, ma'am. You have not testified previously, correct? Okay.
Thank you, Representative, for bringing this bill. A couple years ago,
Ma'am, if you would state your name for the record and you're recognized to testify.
my name is Brittany, and and I am testifying in support of the bill.
Your full name, ma'am.
Brittany Stockton. Sorry.
Thank you.
Apologies. A couple years ago, my three daughters and I left a situation, a situation for safety reasons. I didn't have a job. I didn't have money saved, and I was eligible for benefits at that time. In the past 2 years, I've worked usually 2 jobs to take care of my girls. I'm no longer eligible for benefits, but at that time I was, and I applied and I got everything that I was able to get. Had I had savings, we would have been better off, but I wouldn't have been eligible for the benefits that I had. I wasn't planning to speak on this, but I felt like it was important to share that. Like I said, I have 2 jobs now. I support my girls. I don't qualify for benefits anymore, but that is an asset to people who are leaving under circumstances that they didn't plan on. So please consider that and vote in support of this.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Representative Eubanks, no one else raised their hand. Speak for or against the bill. Yes, ma'am. You are very welcome to.
Good morning. Oh, we're here. Good morning. My name is Holly Skipper. I had no idea this was even a bill that was in committee. I wanted to share a little bit. I have recently become a full-time caregiver for myself, my son that is autistic, and my husband who is in desperate need for a liver. About 3 months ago, I was advised by one of my proctors, I'm a full-time student, and I was advised that maybe I should go and try to apply for food stamps. So I thought, there was only one other time in my life that I ever had to use that, and that was after my first husband passed away, and I became a single parent to a newborn at 3 months old. Fast forward 2 decades later, never thought I would ever have to use it. I always wanted to support those who needed it. When I started this process, and I just got approved 3 days ago, I started this process in December of last year. Not only did I have to account for every dime that I was making in the 2 part-time jobs I had, plus school, plus my son's money, but I spent days and days crying, wondering which job I was going to have to quit so that I could afford to be able to feed my son and feed my partner. So yes, when one of the representatives mentioned that people aren't just going out there to get $300 a month, we get $200 and $5 a month. That's after I pay everything that I have to pay. And right now, I have $13 in my bank account. I work 60 hours a week, including the hours that I go to school. I'm going to school for social work. I guarantee that I'm not spending the 3 months that I spent in the hours in tears, wondering if which bills I have to give up to be able to feed my family for $200 and something a month. So I plead. The reason I mention that is because of the asset limits. Because of the asset limits, we had to go back, and I had to give things away, or I wasn't allowed to give or sell things away, but I had to explain to them why I had a car to get my partner back and forth to UAMS that didn't have 100 and something thousand miles on it, or 200,000 miles. So I guess my point is, in rambling, is that people aren't just out there trying to stay down. We're trying to get some help, and we're trying to get a leg up so we can help other people. So thank you.
Representative Perry, ma'am, if you'll take questions.
Oh, yeah.
Representative Perry.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah.
That was my first. I didn't have any
you're good.
intention of doing this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you coming and testifying. You said you started the application process in December?
Of last year, yes, sir.
And
December the 3rd.
And you got approved 3 days ago?
Yes, sir.
So 4 months?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Skipper, so sorry for the challenges you're facing with your family.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you for taking the time to come and testify. Did you say, and I was following and I got a little sidetracked and it wasn't your fault. Did you say you had to quit one of your jobs to get approved?
We had to lower my hours approximately 3.1 hours a week for me able to get approved. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I had to take a lunch shift off of my week.
Okay. All right.
Because my tips were too much.
Okay.
Pay for gas, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Before I put my foot in my mouth again, is there anyone else in the audience to speak for or against this bill that has not previously spoke on this bill? Seeing none, Representative Eubanks, you are recognized to close for your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I don't like to see people game the system. I don't like to see people on the dole. Anybody at home that knows me understands that. They know how I work and what I expect of other people. I have supported the work requirement for these benefits. I think any able person, if they have one job and they're not being able to make it, then I would agree with what Representative Rose said, that possibly they ought to get a second job, because when my oldest son was in college, I had to recommend that to him. It turned out well, but it's all right to sacrifice. It's all right to put in that time to do that, to try to improve your situation. My daughter is a counselor at an elementary school in Western Arkansas, and I sort of know firsthand the food insecurity that a lot of our young kids are dealing with. I also know what food costs are. Anybody here that has gone to the grocery store in the last year and a half, 2 years, know how it's increased. I don't know. I know what I'm spending. I don't know how other people are being able to afford to feed their families. I had an elderly gentleman contact me after the meeting last week, and he left me a voicemail. And he said, I know you're not trying to expand the roles for this. You're just trying to feed people. He says, I haven't had to deal with this in a long time, but if you've ever had to go without groceries, you appreciate whatever help you can get. He says, I'm not in that situation now, but I appreciate what you're trying to do. Like I said, I don't want people to take advantage of a situation. I do not want to expand the roles unnecessarily. I want people to have an opportunity to improve themselves. And I don't know how you do that if you're not able to accumulate anything. And by being one of the few states in the country that still has asset limits, if what we've been doing worked, why are we still in this same situation? So I would contend that we have to change some things. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm closed, and I'd appreciate a good vote.
Thank you. What's the wishes of the committee? I got a motion to pass. Any discussion on the motion? Representative Bennett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize for being late. I was running several bills in other committees. I want to thank Representative Eubanks for bringing this bill. I have a son with disabilities, and so we're already dealing with some of these issues with him now. So I want to thank you for bringing this to the table, and I hope that the committee will vote yes for this.
Any further discussion? Representative Henley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Eubanks. I'll be voting for this bill. I volunteer at a homeless shelter and food pantry in Hope. And these problems are real. And I believe that Eubanks is right. It's not been working. What we've been doing hasn't been working. I think this is an opportunity to perhaps help people who need help. There are several we had state programs, emergency solutions grant. You may be aware of that. that's been moved from Department of Human Services over to Department of Finance Authority. Grants have been in process for months now, and I don't believe those agencies who have been depending on this money for years and years have been told that they're going to be able to help the homeless nor the people who are hungry. So we have some problems in the state, and I think that this is a method to correct a problem and to help a situation. Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations, your bill is passed.
Thank you, committee.
All right, Representative Hall, is he still in the room? Yeah, Representative Hall, you recognize, present your bill. Can you give us the bill number? 1762.
Representative Brad Hall, District 24, House Bill 1762.
Representative Chad Purrier, I just wanted to come see Representative Wardlaw today and be moral support here.
Yeah, your name's on the list up here, so I don't believe that for a second. But you guys are recognized.
All right, thank you. Hey, this is a constituent bill. What's happened is there was a company, I guess you'd say a statewide company, and they got kicked out of Missouri and Oklahoma. And what this bill deals with is chicken poultry processing waste water. Because when they kill all the chickens and poultry, they have to have wash downs. And so the water has to go somewhere every hour. So they can't let it back up. So they're constantly trucking it out of there. And when they got shut out of Missouri and Oklahoma, the only place they had to go to it was District 24. And it's a large amount of it. Sometimes there's 287 semi-truck loads going one way a day. And so they have open lagoons. They're putting it on top of the ground and disking it in, and they're breaking their permit because they're having to, and they're even self-implying that they're breaking their permit, so.
I think that pretty well covers. I don't have a whole lot to add. I figure we'll have some questions in committee.
Yeah. And so what all this bill says is that if you break your permit 3 times within a 45-day period, we revoke your permit, and that's all it says. So, and those of you that are from the Fort Smith area, that when you smell that smell, that's what it is.
Any questions from committee? Representative Long, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the current fine?
The fine is anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000, but that depends on the ADQ, whatever they want to.
And currently, it's to their advantage just to pay the fine and keep breaking the rules. Is that correct?
Yeah, but they're having to tattle on themselves. Nobody's there to catch them breaking the rules.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Yeah.
Representative Rose.
Motion at a proper time.
Any other questions from committee? Anyone in the audience speak for or against the bill? If you would, introduce yourself for the record and you're recognized to speak. I don't really know how you're speaking, so go ahead. You speaking for or against?
Against.
Okay.
Bailey Taylor, DEQ Director, Chief Administrator of Environment. I do appreciate you, Representative, for the conversations that we've had. But I do need to voice some concerns from the department. So first, this bill adds a clause that is really inapplicable to that section in the solid waste code. So the permits that we issue for the land application of this waste are issued under the water section. And so the section under the Solid Waste Management Act is just, we won't be able to apply it to anything that we regulate. And so we have that concern. And then this also requires us to issue or deny a permit within 180 days. And while that is always our goal, there are certain things that can happen that would prevent us from doing so, such as extensive public comments, if we had staff turnover during a season, or if the permittee does not supply us with all the information that we've requested. And we are in the business of issuing sound, protective, and defensible permits. And so if all of those, if we don't have a perfect record, then we can't issue that, and we would be required to deny that permit. And so we're afraid that this would create a situation where we're having to deny permits, and these businesses would not be able to operate under those conditions. And then lastly, this bill, so we already have processes at DEQ in place to address noncompliance, and we're afraid that this bill prescribes extra requirements on just one type of permit. And so we would be spending our time revoking and having public hearings on these specific permits for these specific type of violations, instead of working through the compliance and enforcement and permitting processes that are already in place. I'm available for questions if needed.
Representative Richardson, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ma'am, so you're saying that the 180 days may be a bit much. So tell me, how many permits are you guys reviewing on a monthly basis?
On a monthly basis, that's going to require me to do math. So in the Office of Water Quality, I would say we have over 7,000 permits. And so on a monthly basis, it could be over 30 to 50, maybe even 100 at times.
Okay. And you're familiar with the issues that we've had in Sebastian and Crawford County with the stench.
Yes, sir.
Have you had a chance to actually smell the stench?
No, sir, I have not been out. We have had inspectors that have been out and documented some certain violations.
Okay, and it's my understanding that we have had inspectors out who have documented, but nothing has ever happened, is my understanding, because the people are continuing to violate the law or their permit, is my understanding. And I have people that are literally getting sick behind the smell that these companies are dropping. And it's dropping in a county that's not even in mine, but the stench reigns, miles and miles away. And, if this is going to add some work to you guys, I'm okay with that. But the most important thing is the reaction that our people are having to what this company is doing. And I'll leave it at there, but I'm 100% supportive of the bill.
Representative Ladyman, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How do you enforce the requirements of these permits? Do you have regular inspections? Do you respond to complaints? How do you enforce that?
We respond to complaints, and then we also have a records review. We do that. It's not quite annually, but we do review their records. And so any violations that would be noted, then we would take enforcement action. We've issued consent administrative orders with a civil penalty.
So you have issued fines to people in the past?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Representative Rose, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry if some of this is redundant to your testimony. But why do you think that these representatives and the co-sponsors feel this bill is necessary?
I don't want to speak to their intentions, but I believe they shared that in their testimony, the constituent concerns.
It's not just constituent concerns. It's the representatives' concerns as well. Why is this still an issue?
The odor?
Well, the odor is the byproduct of the waste, the excessive waste in Crawford County. So why is this still an issue?
So what we're doing, like we said, we are issuing consent administrative orders for violations that we've observed, been reported to us, documented. The second thing we are doing is trying to issue more permits in order to create more land available for this land application so that it's not so concentrated in one area. These permits, like I said, we want them to be sound, defensible, and protective. And so they do take time. We are meeting regularly in order to get these permits issued. We have diverted staff from other projects in order to have more staff time available for these permits. And we've issued 12 to 15 in the last few months. And so we are working on more.
Have you been to the site personally?
No, sir.
You mentioned that you've issued orders. What do those orders do?
They require them to comply with their permit, and they issue a civil penalty.
Are they complying?
Unless they are reporting to us that they're not, or we're observing not, we understand that they are.
So you haven't been to the site. You issued the orders for them to comply. And since you're not going there, the only way for us to know if they're complying is if they tattle on themselves. Is that correct?
No, sir. Our inspectors go there. I personally have not been to the site. I may have misunderstood your question.
So when were your inspectors there last?
I don't know last, but
So you yourself have not been to the site. You don't know when your inspectors have been to the site. And the only way that we can know if they're not complying is if they tell us themselves, hey, we're not complying and now we have to pay a fine.
or we receive a complaint or an inspector is out to the site.
When was the last complaint filed?
I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, we've not met. I know you're testifying against this bill, but you yourself have not been there. You don't know when the last complaint was filed. You don't know when the last time the inspectors were on site. So how are we supposed to take your testimony seriously against this bill if you don't have that information?
I was more speaking on the procedures that this bill created and the concerns with our ability to focus on the procedures versus our the current processes that we have in place for compliance enforcement and the ability to revoke a permit due to noncompliance.
Is there somebody who could testify to when the inspectors were last on site or to when anybody was last on site?
I can look it up on our website.
I mean, that's up to the chair.
Representative Rose, let me ask a question and then we'll get back to you.
Yep, thank you.
So I think my concern is, and this is the ADQ, but I think my concern is the bill sponsor's presentation is this stuff's been outlawed in these other states. Did I hear that correctly? So how are we able to get a permit to do it in Arkansas, and what makes our soil makeup or the ability for this stuff to get into our groundwater different than Missouri and Oklahoma when we're right there? Because I can't imagine the soil being that much difference right across the border.
It is not. The reason why this process was removed in Missouri has nothing to do with their soil makeup or groundwater or any differences.
Okay, so walk me through it.
So we have always had this permitting procedure since I have been there. So we have these permits in existence already. There was an increase in the amount.
Hold on. This is where you department people try to outlaw me, and it doesn't work. I'm a dirt farmer, okay? So we're going to go slow and easy here.
Okay.
I didn't ask you what the process was or how our process was. I asked you why we allow it when these other two states don't allow it.
Yes.
And then I gave an example of why I think they should or didn't. I want to know from you why we do and they don't. Period. That's it. That's all I want to know.
Because no one has banned our ability to issue that.
So the proper way to issue this bill would have been a ban and not a 3 strikes and you got to do that. You're out on the permit.
I can't speak to the will of
If their will was to get rid of it, would that not have been the proper way to get rid of it?
That would have been a mechanism. I believe that would probably left some industries in distress.
But that's what happened in Oklahoma and Missouri is they filed legislation that said you cannot put this on our property in our states.
In a roundabout way, yes, sir.
Okay. Representative Rose, do you have a follow-up?
I do.
Thank you.
Have you had conversations or meetings with industry leaders about this? The poultry industry?
No, sir.
Has anybody in your organization met or had conversations?
Yes, they have been to our office. Yes,
okay. So, again, I want to go back to you mentioned that this is about policy and procedures, and it seems like the policy and procedures that you hear testifying to are not doing anything to alleviate the issue because it continues. And I'm in the area as these two representatives are, as Representative Richardson is. It's a constant issue. And
the policy and procedures are not fixing it. So is there somebody in your agency who could at least come down here and tell us if the policy and procedures are working? Like, when was the last time they were fined? When's the last time there was an inspection? When was the last time somebody was on site?
I know within the last month they have been on site.
What happened with that?
I do know that. So how that works is we have an investigation, we issue a report, and if there are findings, it's referred to enforcement. I don't want to speak to drafts that are, haven't been proposed or reviewed or anything like that, but we have issued consent administrative orders. I believe that there have been other recent violations that have been referred to enforcement, and so that process would be ongoing at this time.
So let's do this.
I got one more, Mr. Chairman.
I understand. Hold on. Wait till I make this reference. I think it's going to help you. We're going to meet again upon adjournment. House bills will still have time to make it through the process from this afternoon. So why don't you go back to your department, get us some defense, from your folks at the department, get some answers, be able to come back and legitimately be able to answer these questions from the members. And we'll pick up right here with you at the table when we come back after session. Representative Rose, is that amenable?
Follow your lead, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Let's do that. Representative Hall, are you okay with that?
Yes, sounds great.
Okay. All right. So let's do that. And I'm going to start. We have some members on their way here from other committees, but until they get here, I'm going to start calling bills off. These bills will get a strike. Representative Aker, you can go ahead and go to the table. We'll start with yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Committee. Representative Aker, District 71. Here to present House Bill 1961. So this is a bill that was brought to me by some healthcare providers. It's a simple bill. It allows them
to... You have an amendment?
Oh, no, I'm not reading an amendment. Sorry.
Okay.
I did have it drafted, but we've met with the individuals who had concerns, and we've been able to quiet that with no opposition.
Okay. Okay.
Carried.
You're recognized.
Okay. So what this bill does is it allows a healthcare provider who orders a test to put a temporary hold on that test being automatically uploaded and available to the patient. This allows them, if they have believable cause that the patient would be harmed or that there can be some anxiety induced from the medical jargon that comes from that test, it has to be provider specific and test specific. So real world example, when I get my CT scans results, they're written in such a way that they don't offer any sort of diagnostic information, but they can provide some troubling language. And what this allows is if the provider who ordered the test wants time to review it, set up an appointment, and have a treatment plan, we don't want to interrupt that continuity of care. And so it can't be a blanket restriction. I believe the temporary restriction is only for 30 days. And again, I do feel that providers who have issued these have ran into issues where it's a Friday night and a test is uploaded to the portal and it's kind of freaked their patient out a little bit and they're not able to get a hold of that provider to get some clarity. This kind of maintains that patient-provider relationship with the test, and it's specific to a test. It can't be their entire profile, and it can only be for a temporary amount of time. So with that, I welcome any questions.
Yeah, I'll take a question. Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm for this bill, but I am curious, and I didn't see this. I mean, if there is a situation like, let's say, a test comes back, and for some reason a provider has like a medical emergency comes up and is not able to be found, but you've got a patient who's waiting on a test. I mean, and they're on pins and needles the whole time trying to know whether or not this test gets back. I mean, is there any way for them to get that information? And I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the presentation. But
So actually the provider itself is the only one that can have that restriction from the provider. They can't delegate that to any other provider. So if the patient met with another provider and that provider wanted to release a test or see it, or if the patient reached out to the lab or the people who actually did the testing or the imaging, they can still do that. So they can't delegate the restriction to anybody else other than them themselves.
So they can't delegate the restriction, but they can delegate the releasing of it to someone else.
I don't believe that they can't, if a patient met with another provider, that provider could release that.
Okay. Well, I guess what I'm saying is, so let's say you've got a multiple provider clinic and the provider for some reason is not able to release it or hasn't released it yet for whatever reason. I can't call up and say, hey, I've been waiting for these results. I haven't got them back yet. You know, Dr. Johnson, I know, was in a car accident, but I'm needing these results. Can Dr. Rose give these results to me and go over them with me? Is that possible?
Yes, that's possible.
Okay. That's just what I wanted to know.
Any further questions? Representative Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Got two questions, Representative Aker. You said something about 30 days. Is that the provider has 30 days before he or she can release the information to the patient?
They have 30 days before they lose their ability to withhold it. So if they can't get an appointment with the patient or they can't follow up and call the patient and release that, then it automatically becomes available within after 30 days. So basically, the provider can temporarily up to 30 days. They can put a week, 2 weeks, up to 30 days to try and coordinate a time where they can sit down with the patient, go over the news, because as you can imagine, there can be some heavy consequences to people misinterpreting and Googling test results on stuff as serious as cancer or as serious as a broken arm or where is that line? The providers, I believe, want the ability to maintain that relationship with the patient and give them the full scope of their skills and assessment.
Yeah, one follow-up. The reason why I asked that question, I had a similar situation. I had to wait 2 weeks, and I thought something was seriously wrong with me. But I had to get an appointment because I had to pay for the appointment. So I go back to the provider because I couldn't get information after I looked on the portal and saw the test. Right. And then I had to wait 2 weeks, probably 2.5 weeks. And I thought I was checking out, but I wasn't.
Right. I would think that scenario is more problematic with the portal. This would be the provider themselves making a specific request on Mr. Ferguson's result for this specific test. It's not your entire profile. It's just saying if we're testing for something that the provider wants to have a one-on-one conversation with you about to give you the full complexity of the situation, they can cherry pick what test they really want.
One last question. The provider wants a test of my liver, but he wants to wait before he talks to me after the test. So therefore, I can't see the results of the test. Is this what this bill does?
Only if that provider wants to put that restriction on there. If you reach out to the lab that did the test, you can still get those results.
Okay. So I can get the results regardless of what the provider is attempting to do.
Right. What this would be is that patient portal you have. That's where he would put the hold on it because he wants to see you to go over those results. If you were adamant about getting those, you still have an avenue through the testing agency that actually performed the test.
Okay.
Representative Barnes.
So, thank you, Chair. So the basis of this bill is basically to be able to have a conversation with a patient that may be receiving some bad information concerning a test that they've had on their body, 3 months to live, maybe a month to live, something like that. And they want to make sure they sit down with them, talk to them, kind of help them through it before they get that information without having someone to talk with them.
That's correct.
That's the basis of it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Great idea.
Any further questions? Representative Cooper, if you would come see me for a second. Any further questions? Seeing none, anyone in the audience speak for or against the bill? You recognize closed for your bill, which I hope you are.
I'm very much closed.
Have
Thank
a
you,
motion.
committee.
Have a motion to pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, ayes have it. With that, congratulations, your bill passed. Representative Hudson, you're recognized to introduce yourself and present your bill for the committee.
With the chair's permission, may I have a guest come join me at the table?
If you will identify yourself for the record, and you'll be recognized to help present.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Chairman. My name is Melissa Farmer.
Representative Hudson, hold on one second. Members, we're getting close to the end of the session, to the end of House bills being able to move forward. We'll make this announcement so everybody can hear us in here and everybody can hear us out of here. We're going to issue the committee to meet at the call of the chair upon adjournment. We're going to adjourn at 12 to 12:15 this morning. We're going to come back after the session. I'm going to hear House bills only first and then Senate bills. And then Thursday, we will only hear Senate bills. I've held senators off all morning to give you guys